What was it like when babies started dying and you couldn't understand why?
I've been a paediatrician since 1992 and I had never in my career seen anything like this. And actually initially there was a feeling of thank goodness Lucy was on, because she's really good in a crisis, she's really good at managing these things. But as time progressed, the thoughts started springing into our heads. Could she be doing something deliberately?
So the thought starts sinking in that there could be a killer on the unit. I mean, that's a big moment.
It's a big moment, and it's a chilling moment. I don't think anybody has a rule book for how you deal with a situation where you're suspecting that somebody's causing deliberate harm to babies on your neonatal unit.
What's happening? What's good? What's going on? Part of my President's YouTube channel. I want to talk about this trending story coming out of England. It involves a British nurse, a neonatal nurse, by the name of Lucy Letby, and apparently she was convicted recently and sentenced to life in prison for, check this, killing 7 babies, but also attempting to kill 6 more at a hospital in northern England. Now, I want to read you this article to get some insight as to what actually transpired here, and then we're going to go into some other details. I want to give my take on it as well too. So the article is from CBC, and it says here that a former neonatal nurse who killed 7 babies in her care and tried to kill 6 others at a hospital in northern England was sentenced Monday to life in prison with no chance of release by a judge who highlighted the cruelty and calculation of her actions. Lucy Letby, who refused to appear in court to face grieving parents, was given the most severe sentence possible under British law, which does not allow for the death penalty. Now, right off the bat, the first thing I'll say here is that it's odd that in British law that the convicted is not required to sit or stand there and face the grieving parents for the victim statement, because that's the whole point of the victim statement, is to be able to tell the convicted person how you've destroyed the family, you devastated the lives of all the family members of the loved ones who lost their lives at the hand of this particular person. And you also get to, show your anger and grief and let them feel it. That's the whole point of the victim statement. So it's kind of odd that they allow the convicted to sit this one out, like some type of elective course in college. This is not something that should be the case. They should be able to stand and face the fire from the victims' families, and they should be able to pretty much rinse her out, cuss her out, say whatever they want to say to her, and make her feel the pain that they caused. Because this is, again, victims of a newborn child who probably wasn't able to spend more than a week or 2 weeks on this earth to enjoy their lives. They probably weren't able to spend much time with their parents either before they passed away unexpectedly based on Lucy's actions. So it's crazy that they're not even allowed to speak to Lucy directly and tell her exactly how they feel. So that's pretty crazy, first of all. So the article continues. It says that Justice James Goss, who was the judge who presided over this particular trial, he said that the number of killings and attempts and the nature of the murders by this neonatal nurse who was entrusted to care for the most fragile babies provided the exceptional circumstances required to impose a so-called whole life order, which is exceptionally rare. So they're referring to the full life sentence where she'll never get out of prison. So the judge goes on to say that there was a malevolence bordering on sadism in your action. During the course of the trial, you have coldly denied any responsibility for your wrongdoing. You have no remorse. There are no mitigating factors. It goes on to say that following 22 days of deliberation, a jury at Manchester Crown Court convicted Letby, who is 33, of killing the babies over a year-long period. The victims died in neonatal care unit at the Countess of Chester Hospital in northwest England between the period of June 2015 to June 2016. So one of the victims' family members made this comment. They said, "I don't think we'll ever get over the fact that our daughter was tortured till she had no fight left in her, and everything she went through over her short life was deliberately done by someone who was supposed to protect her and help her come home where she belonged. So this is the mother of one of the girls who was killed by Lucy. So this was read in court, but of course Lucy was not there to hear this. It goes on to say that the British government has said that an independent inquiry will be conducted into what happened at the hospital and how staff and management responded to the spike in the deaths. So this is what I want to get into, some of the details here, because I did some research on this story. This was something that was pretty much known from the start that there was an issue, because at the time, over that period of time at the hospital, there was a review that was done, because apparently there were a lot of deaths happening at the hospital of newborn babies in neonatal care. And once they did a review on the numbers, they found out that the number of people who had died in that period of time was double the amount of kids or babies that usually die in that time frame at that hospital. So it was clearly out of line, out of order, statistically speaking. So they knew that there was a problem and there was something that was going on, whether it was due to incompetence, whether it was due to some type of failure in training, or whether it was done maliciously, as it was in this particular case. And when they conducted their investigation, what they found was that Lucy was a part of majority of these cases. In other words, they found out that her name was attached to all of these deaths, pretty much. And they suspected something was going on, but they didn't do anything about it. And when it came to Lucy's attention that there was an investigation that was surrounding her involvement in it, she filed a grievance. And when she filed a grievance, she actually won the grievance, and the consulting agency who did the investigation had to apologize to her. How crazy is that? That a serial killer in this particular case, who they suspected of wrongdoing, but for whatever reason, the grievance that she filed and the union who supported her, they won the case, and they had to apologize to this neonatal murderer. This is crazy. And after that apology, she was allowed to return to work, but apparently she decided not to. And then that brought up more red flags. And then, of course, there was another investigation that was done to say, hey, there seems to be some issue here. And here's the funny thing about this. Once she was arrested and, they took her away from the hospital and she wasn't able to be present for future births, they found that, statistically speaking, the number of deaths from newborns, it dropped drastically to the point where they only had just one, compared to the amount that they had when Lucy was on that particular shift. So clearly, the people that are involved, again, in this case, it's Lucy who was involved, but the people surrounding that whole scenario, they knew. They should have known. They should have put all of the pretty much red flags out there and line them all up and realize that, hey, there is an issue here and we need to do something about this. And unfortunately, it took 7 deaths, 6 attempted deaths for them to finally take Lucy out of the hospital. So it should be highlighted that all of these actions that she's accused of occurred between 2015 to 2016 when she filed for a grievance and it was found that there was no wrongdoing on her part. She didn't return. Okay, so about a year or two passed since, and when they realized that the mortality rate at the hospital dropped drastically, they decided, you know what, this is not a coincidence. There's something going on. We need to follow up and arrest Lucy. But they didn't actually arrest her for the first time until 2017. I believe, again, they arrested her in 2020, and then she didn't stand trial until 2023. So the amount of time that passed since these actions occurred, and again, if you know anything about serial killers and how repetitive that urge is, we don't know if she's committed more crimes since then, right? So it's hard to fathom how they let this slide for so long and nothing was done about this. And for the morbid people who are wondering how she executed these murders, apparently she injected some with air into the veins of the newborn. She also poisoned them with insulin, overfed them, And apparently she also attacked some infants with medical instruments. So again, this was a sadistic woman, and that's an understatement, to be honest. Now, as far as a motive, it's not really clear what the motive was and what made her do this, but apparently after her arrest, they found a confession note, I guess. And in that confession, she mentions that she killed them on purpose because she was not good enough for them. Now, I'm not even sure what that even means, because she's not the one who's taking care of these babies. She's not the parent. And the babies have parents, obviously. Once you nurse the babies back to health, from their premature birth, the nurses are going to give the baby to the parents, and the parents have to be good enough for them. And if they gave birth to them, then of course they are good enough to take care of them. Who else will be better? So I don't understand what that means. I don't understand how that's a motive for her as to why she decided to kill them. I don't know if she wasn't able to have kids of her own. I don't know if she had any other trauma in her life that would have caused this, but I don't really give a fuck, to be honest with you, because I don't want to hear any excuse about why she did this or what her origin story is. None of that really matters. This woman is pure evil, in my opinion. And of all disturbing things, this probably is the most disturbing to me, is that some of the babies that she killed, she engaged with some of their family members, and apparently she gave one family a sympathy card and played this role as, this nurse who tried the best and did all that she could, even gaining sympathy for her involvement in the failure of making sure the baby is nursed to health. So it's crazy to see how she's getting so involved and so close to the situation, especially when she was told not to get involved in the grieving process and to give the family space. So what type of evil person do you have to be where you get off on people grieving like this, and to the point where you want to inject your presence into that moment, but yet and still when it comes time for the victim statement, you don't want to show your face? It's crazy. As far as my insight on this, I'm not sure what else I could say that you guys are not already thinking in this situation. This woman is pure evil. It's the lowest of the low, if you ask me, because here you are as a neonatal nurse. You are entrusted to take care of these newborns. You're given the job and the authority to look after them, to nurse them back to health, because these kids cannot speak for themselves. They cannot defend themselves. They're very vulnerable. And here you are taking advantage of all of that. One of the things I always say as a parent, and this is how I feel, that I would never put my kids in anyone's care until they were at the point where they could speak up for themselves, are they able to defend themselves, and they could vocalize whenever something is going on that is not right, because you want to make sure that your kids are able to defend themselves, right? But in this case, they weren't. These children were not able to defend themselves. They're newborns. They cannot speak. They cannot communicate. They cannot raise red flags. And this is where there's a failure in the system, because that hospital, they knew something was wrong. They knew that she was involved, and yet they still apologized, and they still let her off the hook, to the point where she could have injured or killed more babies at another hospital. And the one thing I will say is that some people mentioned race and whether racism was involved in this. Now, one thing I will say is that it was never discussed whether the babies that she targeted were of a specific race. And even gender-wise, she targeted baby boys and also baby girls as well too. So there's no issue in regards to that. But one thing I will say that people forget when it comes to racism, it's not just about people hating others or people making insults towards a specific group. It's also in the case where certain groups are given the benefit of the doubt, while other groups don't have the benefit of the doubt, and they have to prove themselves. They have to prove their innocence. They have to prove their existence and their presence. But in this case, it seems that Lucy was given the benefit of the doubt on so many occasions, to the point where the consulting firm who was doing the investigation had to apologize to her. And I wonder whether if it was a different racial group, as far as if it was another nurse, whether or not she would have gotten that leeway to do all of these things without someone saying, no, we have to investigate this thoroughly and we have to make sure that Lucy is the real deal. Because I don't see how they allowed this to continue for so long, because that's really giving the benefit of the doubt. And I'll give you another example as to what I'm talking about. I was watching this Netflix series called Lupin, Lupin. It's a French miniseries, and the premise is that it's a con man who goes around in different disguises, tricking people and conning people. He ends up either stealing family jewels or heirlooms or priceless artwork around France and Europe. And the odd thing about it is that it's played by a black man who is 6'5" and maybe 230 pounds. And the premise is that this person, Lupin, gets to pretty much play the game and blend into any scenery, blend into any social group, and he's able to make off like a bandit. And I don't see how a 6'5", 250-pound black man can do that, especially in a tight community like the art community. I don't see how you're able to disguise yourself and blend in as a man with that type of stature and that type of description. So it's laughable, right? But at the same time, in this case, Lucy and what she's able to do, she could blend in because her coworkers didn't notice anything, didn't feel that she was abnormal. They felt that she was a regular nurse, and they actually defended her in some of the cases as well too. And I wonder, if she was of another race, would they be so quick to defend her? Would there be more eyes on her to watch what she's doing? More suspicion brought up? Because we all know there's cases where black people, if they're nurses, if they're doctors, or if they're lawyers, like legitimately, they still have to prove that they are. And a lot of times people question them and they have to prove that they are who they say they are. So again, that just goes to show you how benefit of the doubt can be found in these situations. And that is a result of racism. So could that have been a factor in this case? I think it could have, to be honest with you. So could this have happened if it was a black nurse or any other race of nurse where there's a trail of 7 deaths and 6 attempted murders? I don't think so. I think at the most they would have been more suspicions. They would have blocked her a lot sooner, taken her away from the neocare unit. They would have done something to make sure that she's never in that scenario again. So again, I do have to say that racism could have been involved in this case in regards to how much benefit Lucy was given. But you let me know how you feel about the situation. Again, I want to say rest in peace to all of the babies who were not able to live full and productive lives. And I also want to send my condolences to the family members of all of these children who lost their lives, because this is definitely not the type of thing that you want to experience or deal with, especially in the case where you've invested so much of your time, you've waited and you nurtured a baby, a child for 9 months, and when you are ready to meet this bundle of joy is taken away from you by this deranged and evil neonatal care nurse. This reads something like a horror movie, and unfortunately, you never know. This might be in the movies in the future, or it may have already been in the movies already. I believe Misery comes to mind, but there may have been other movies as well too. But this is a sad, sad story and a very grimy story. And Lucy Letby is a grimy, evil serial killer. You let me know how you feel about the situation. Like, comment, subscribe, leave comments in the comments section. And until next time, part of my presence YouTube channel. Next move, best move. Peace.